and to have someone that will support that kind of wandering path until you get there is important, because it's the learning process is so huge that I think people forget that they want to be fixed, but it takes so much work and so much time. So yeah.
Hello, and welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Julie Johnson. I am the president and founder of Heart and Solutions. We're a counseling agency here in Iowa doing outpatient mental health counseling in person or over the phone. We're also doing in-home behavioral health care for children.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt. I am the vice president at Heart and Solutions in charge of our behavioral health department. So that we call it BHIS, Behavioral Health Intervention Services. And that's the program that Julie just mentioned, where we go in home and work with kids ages 4 to 18 in charge of to work on different behavioral skills. We can also see them at school, in the office, or right now with telehealth as well. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
We post on Sunday nights, so batch up whatever task you hate doing, meal prepping, putting away laundry, anything like that. That's like, you got to do it to live your life during the week, but man, does it stink. Nobody likes that. Okay, so go ahead and batch that up. Don't do it every day. Just do it once a week. Do it on Sunday nights and put on the podcast. That way you've got the entire week to get in touch with your counselor, to get connected with the resources of our guests here on the show. So Sunday nights, 5 p.m. Central. Okay, you guys, so we have a guest today that we are very excited to interview. He works with an organization that does a ton of different things, but we are excited to hear specifically about the service that he is involved with. So we've got Austin Snell here. Hey, Austin, welcome.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hi. Good to have you. Yes, good to have you here. So I'll brag on Austin a little bit. I met Austin last fall at an empowerment conference, and the empowerment conference in Iowa is a conference about peer support and for peer support providers to get training and also to get support for the peer support. And so over the years at that empowerment conference, I've learned a lot about peer support that I otherwise would not have known about. So I'm very, very excited for Austin to explain what peer support is and kind of let us into that world. Austin has been working in this field for 7 years. He additionally has done community outreach. He also works what's called a warm line, which is, everybody's heard of a hotline. So Austin works a warm line. So I'm going to let him tell you guys what that is about too. I haven't heard of a cold line. I think a cold line's probably not a good thing.
Until you said hotline, I didn't even get it. That's why is that why it's called the warm line?
I think so. I mean, we'll let Austin explain that.
So it's
that's our first question.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, right? The warm line versus a hotline. And that always draws people attention. But I think that the main idea behind the warm line is that people have someone they can confide in, they can call in and talk to, and they can do that one time if they need to. They can do that multiple times if they need to, and kind of get a rapport going with some of the operators. But for the most part, it's there for people who need to talk to someone about their mental health issues or need to find more resources that we have available, those kinds of things. I find it very beneficial for people who need to say, I went through this today, or I went through this years ago, and I haven't talked to anybody about this. And it's been an interesting job, shocking in some senses, but also very heartwarming in the fact that we can use the experience that we have through going through the system a little bit and helping people get what they need. So, yeah.
I love it. And what I love about the warm line is that It is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's exclusively staffed by people who have had experiences in the mental health field and in the behavioral health field. And so when you're calling the warm line, you're not just talking to some clinician, who doesn't know what it's like to go through those things. You're talking to somebody who has peer support training. And, when we think about peer support, so peers, right? So your peers are people who are like you in some way, right? And so I think that it's such an important thing, because when you're calling the warm line, you can know that you're talking to somebody who's gone through challenges in their own life, not just hearing about it third hand from other people or studying it in books. These are real people who have gone through real challenges themselves and overcome those challenges, that are now kind of passing the baton, using their life experiences to help other people. I think that really sets the warm line apart. It's also very accessible, because I think sometimes people get concerned about calling a hotline. So of course people can call suicide prevention hotline, but I think that, with a lot of mental health challenges that we face, especially depression and anxiety, we go, oh, I'm good. It's not that bad, right? We kind of minimize the things that we're going through. And so then along that line of thinking, the thought of going to a hotline, we go, well, it's not as bad as other people who might need the hotline. But a warm line is open. A warm line, you don't need to be in a crisis, a life or death crisis that moment. You just need to call in when you need somebody to talk to.
Right, right. And I find that it's beneficial for more than one situation. It's pretty universally beneficial in the sense that people talk to us about everything and anything they can, to try to reduce that anxiety, to try to bring those symptoms down a little bit. And for the most part, we're able to handle that because we've seen a lot of that in our day-to-day lives. So yeah.
I love what you said about somebody could call in after having a hard day. Like, just, hey, this was a rough day. They could call in and say that to somebody. And I love that, because there's the option for that immediacy. You could also call in and say, this thing happened to me 10 years ago and it came up for me today, right? And I need to talk about it. So it is just so encompassing, right? And available to so many different people. So I love that. I think that's amazing. And now, Austin, you've had your own counseling experiences too. So we love talking to people who have had good ones, bad ones, and indifferent. And it sounds like you've had a great one and then a bad one. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I've been seeing the same counselor now for about 10 years, and it has been fantastic in the sense that I think there's been work going on there that has taken place that maybe I haven't even been that cognizant of, and knowing that it's actually, working and taking place, but I can see in my day-to-day living that my thoughts have changed and progressed in a way that I know that I'm helping myself, and I'm not kind of ruminating on these negative, cyclical thinking patterns. But my counselor now has been wonderful. Started about 10 years ago, and we just had the experience the other day where she said to me, I think you're kind of happy. And I said, yes, I feel pretty happy. And she said, well, you weren't 10 years ago. And I said, you're right, and I think I'm a firm believer that any kind of mental health crisis needs to be handled with a many-pronged approach. And I believe in counseling just as much as I believe in medication, just as much as I believe in exercise and all of those pieces that go into helping ourselves. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, I love that you are using counseling as one of your tools.
Right.
It's one of your tools. It's not an end all be all. It doesn't support every piece of us, because we have multiple tools in our toolkit, and counseling is one of them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Wow. 10 years. That's amazing. And
Yeah.
it's wonderful because what you're reflecting on is that this is a person who knew you 10 years ago, right? And so many, I mean, gosh, how many things change? We're not the same person as you know, as we were 10 years ago. And so having some, but we change so slowly as humans, right? We incrementally change. And so it's kind of like with my daughter, like I don't notice her growing until I measure her, right, on her yardstick. And so to have somebody kind of be your yardstick over the
Mhm.
last 10 years and be able to say, this is how tall you were 10 years ago, this is how tall you are now, is that's amazing. What a great opportunity and experience, that relationship.
Yeah, I find it to be absolutely priceless, and the way that my recovery has gone. And to tell you about the kind of the worst experience I had, the harder experiences I've had were, earlier on trying to find a counselor and probably being very symptomatic at the same time. So not sticking with it is always a problem, as we know. Getting started with somebody that you're not exactly sure of, that you think that you're probably going to have some struggles with getting to know the person, and things like that. That is always difficult for me, but I had to go through a lot of counselors before I found the one I liked. So what I'm saying is we got to stick with it, always got to stick with it a while and think about it before you want to run the other direction, I think.
Absolutely. And so what were some of the things that you noticed when you were you were interviewing counselors, right? And that's important to to go,
Right,
okay, I'm going to cast a wide net because I only need one good one, right? So I'm going
right.
to cast a wide net and see what sticks, right? And so what were some of the things that you were able to kind of learn as you went and go, oh, that's not something I want. That is something I want, right? I feel comfortable with this kind of situation. These kinds of things kind of bother me or hinder the situation. What were some of those things that you learned through that process?
Well, I think I really wanted to work with somebody who had worked with individuals in the field, who had been doing some social work, things like that. I'd had, years of probably not such great behavior and things. I needed somebody to understand why I had that behavior, and how I can adjust to make that work. So I wanted someone who'd been in the trenches a little, and I was able to find someone who's a licensed, social worker who does therapy, and I think that was important to me. But I think for me, experience, and of course I'm a peer support specialist, right? So experience is everything. But I think that having a person that has experienced people having behaviors made a bigger impact on me than anything, because I knew that if I were going to have some kind of uncomfortable situation with them, that they would be able to handle it better. Kind of a different perspective there, maybe. So.
I love that. So you were able to identify that I want somebody who has experience with working with people who are in this field, in this helping profession, working with other people, because this is a hard field. These are hard jobs. This is a hard life, being in this field and working with people and helping people and so I love that you were able to identify that and go, no, this is who I am. I am a person in this field with these experiences. I want somebody who, one, understands that and is able to work with me on that. Also, somebody who is going to hear about, explore maybe some of my behaviors that I want to change and be able to see past those behaviors. A lot of times in just our day-to-day life, we experience a lot of people that it's very, very difficult for them to look past behaviors, and to see what is behind those behaviors, to see intention, to see, if we need help. And it's difficult for people to do that. I think we're such a behaviorally based society. I think because that's what people see. So if you have a snapshot of something, it's like, well, what can I can't read Chrissa's mind or her feelings or her thoughts, right? But I can see what she does and I can hear what she sounds like. And so I think that what you've identified is that you were able to go, no, I want somebody who is able to look past behaviors of my past or of my recent past and be able to help me and see that I want to change those things. I want to become this person. I think that's just such great insight into that process, those things that you were able to identify.
Yeah, thank you. And I think one thing I've always believed is that people oftentimes see those behaviors and they don't understand kind of how symptomatic people are in that state, or that it is a pretty big sign of a person being symptomatic. And sometimes behaviors are seen as far more intentional than they are, depending on how, what a person is going through. So I've always believed in trying to give people that benefit of the doubt and say, okay, we move forward from here.
Absolutely. Could you give us some examples of, the kinds of things that you were struggling with? And then help us see what you were struggling with then, and then 10 years later.
Yeah.
I mean, I already know from your bio how well you're doing, but but just give us a before and after picture.
Okay. Well, I mean, 10 years ago, I for one, the big thing for me is I was drinking a lot of alcohol, and I was able to get through that with my therapist and with realizing that my medications weren't working when I was drinking heavily, and that I would never stabilize on these medications that I knew I needed, because I've always been a person who believed from pretty early on that my medications did work if I took them the way they were prescribed. And so I did fairly well with that, but I became a heavy drinker, and that was all self-medication. So I was trying to escape, what was going on in my head by drinking very heavily. And so the thing that has majorly changed is I've been sober now for over 8 years. Yay. So that's a good thing.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's huge.
And I wasn't able to do that. I wouldn't have never been able to do that without my counselor, because that was the one person I could go to and say, okay, this is what I'm seeing at AA. This is what I'm seeing with my friends. This is what I'm seeing with my family. And she was able to tie that all together and say to me, okay, well, this is what I think you're seeing there. I think, but most of all, she allowed me to think what I needed to think in order to get to the place I am today. And to have someone that will support that kind of wandering path until you get there is important, because it's the learning process is so huge that I think people forget that they want to be fixed, but it takes so much work and so much time.
Absolutely. I mean, what a beautiful testimony. You're 8 years sober. You started working with this counselor 2 years before your sober anniversary birthday, right? So 2 years of doing that work and then becoming sober and then staying sober for that 8 years. Do you feel like those 2 years were really what got you to that place where you could go, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is who I am now?
Yeah, and I felt like I was ready to quit when I met my counselor. I mean, that was a huge part of who I was. I wanted to do it, but I don't think I would have been able to without that correct support. And I just feel like it wasn't just the support and the alcoholism. It was more about actually adapting your thought process, being able to change the way you think. And that is something that I still can't put my finger on how it has been done, but it has been, and that's a good thing. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In 12 step, we spend a lot of time trying not to question, right? How it happens.
Right.
And so I mean, but how beautiful. And I can really relate with what you're saying about going through, you mentioned AA, going through a 12 step, and trying to reconcile the 12 step with life, with people outside of your program. What a challenge that is, especially at a time where like we're not in control of ourselves anyway. And so we're trying to reconcile all of that, and we're trying to find what is my voice though in all of this. And so I really love what you've identified about, your time in counseling was your time to go, okay, I'm hearing this, I'm being told this, I'm being told this. This is what I think. This is what I believe, given all of these new things that I'm learning and processing. And I think that is just really, really amazing that you were able to form that therapeutic relationship at that time. And also what keeps coming to mind for me is the patience that you demonstrated, because gosh, how many people, or how easy or tempting is it to go, okay, I want to change these things in my life. I'm going to start therapy. And then 6 months later, be like, I'm not sober, right? A year later, be like, I'm not sober, and to stop counseling, right? And you didn't. You had patience. You recognized that this is a process, and this is something that I just need to be consistent with. And you were as consistent as you could. You did it for that 10 years, and it worked. But I mean, gosh, how many exit ramps were there?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. And I think it's to be able to have come this far and to do what I've done. Like I said, it just takes a village, and that's something I really realize in our healthcare system here in Iowa. We have to face the fact that we don't always have the best mental health care, and I think that it's really important in my recovery to mention that I have to count on my friends, I have to count on my family, I have to count on anybody I can, any resource that I can put together to make my recovery better. I have to do it because it is that many pronged approach. So
Absolutely. I love that. It's, sometimes people look at counseling and they go, well, I'm in counseling, right? And that's kind of where the end of the road goes. And so I'd love to ask you some questions about peer support, because we talk a lot about building your team, building the people around you that are going to be that support for you. And absolutely, we believe that everybody can benefit from counseling, but like you said, it is a tool that we use. It's one of our tools, and like you said, that multi-pronged approach. So let's talk a little bit about peer support, because if I had not attended all those empowerment conferences, I would not know what peer support is. It's like the best kept secret of the mental health and behavioral health world. So tell us about peer support.
Okay, well, peer support is very much, well, it's completely, in my mind, experience based. So those of us who are peer support specialists, we've gone to a 40-hour class at least, where we've gone, for the week and gone through some training as far as how to deal with other individuals, how to tell our recovery story, all that kind of thing. But we all have some experience with a diagnosis. We all have some experience with our own recovery and our own treatment. And of course, because we've been exposed to other individuals who are in the field and also done work in the field, we just have a lot of resources to share with people in general, because we've seen things that other people haven't seen along the way in our own recoveries.
What I love about peer support is, yes, there is that training of, okay, well, this is how to be a peer support specialist. But really what is coming through and what the benefit is of having a peer support person is their lived experience, right? It's not about like they take the training and they kind of go through, logistics and all of that. But really what peer support providers are offering is, I know what you're going through because I've been through something similar, right? We're never going to have the same experience, but I've been there, right? I've experienced trying to get help and getting, nobody picking up the phone, right? I've experienced finally getting an appointment and then being disappointed with the person I meet with, right? And so having lived those experiences and having gone through different resources in the area and going, yep, I can tell you who's great over here, right? And I can tell you if you call this number instead of this one, you get an answer faster, right? Things like that are so vital for somebody who's going through and trying to navigate. I mean, gosh, our healthcare system in general is just so challenging to navigate, and mental health is no exception, right? And so having somebody walk beside you who's been through it, who can sit with you and say, you're not the only one going through this. Like, you're the only one in your own specific situation, but these barriers, we can work through them together.
Right. And I absolutely love what you were talking about there, because we have had a lot of negative experiences with providers, with certain things that we've learned to navigate and work around with our friends and with our other peers. So there are a lot of things like that that I've said to people in passing when I first kind of started this job. I'll say, it's really hard to find a dentist if you're on Medicaid. It's like impossible, right? So then you do that networking that's there. And people will say, I've seen this person, either in Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, and you get that connection that you don't usually have. And the other thing I'll say about it too is the emotional connection that we have with people that suffer, because I always felt like I was misunderstood. I always felt like I was alone. And those are things that we need to come together as people and say, you know what, there are other people who experience this, and peer support's a great level to do that on, for us to say, hey, I felt empty, I felt alone, I felt like no one cared. And people are going to be much more open and accepting of that when it comes from someone who is probably not just walked out of a textbook, but somebody who's actually seen that happen. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I will say one of my favorite things about the Empowerment Conference is getting to see peer support specialists or people who are coming who are not peer support specialists, but are coming to learn about mental health and learn about behavioral health. I've seen so many people that when I met them, they were coming to the conference to learn about managing their own symptoms, to learn about helping their own situation. And then over the years, they've become peer support specialists. And then the next time I meet them, they're there as a peer support. They're getting, continuing education credits for being there, for learning these techniques. And now the shift is of focus has shifted because they originally came trying to find some answers and solutions for themselves, and now they're coming every year to learn that information for their peer supports that they are supporting. And it's just one of my favorite things about that conference every year, is just seeing people and going, oh my gosh, like this person is presenting this year. And I remember the first time I met them, and they were coming here for the first time to just kind of go, I need to learn about what is mental health and what are my symptoms and how do I cope with this. It's amazing. I mean, it gives me goosebumps right now just thinking about those experiences.
Yeah, it's very cool to see people do that. And I think this job has helped my recovery so much because I've been able to focus on that like 100%, whether it be through my job or through my personal life. But I'm able to see that recovery a lot clearer. And boy, it's just helped me with my mental health tremendously. So then it snowballs, it just picks up speed. The more people who have that experience. Yeah.
It's what they say in 12-step, right? To keep it, we have to give it away. And I think peer support is the epitome of that, to keep that recovery, to keep that wellness, we give it away. And that's what keeps us well. And I just think that is amazing to see that growth. So when you met your counselor for the first time 10 years ago, how did you did you feel immediately connected, or did that take some time? How did you kind of know that was a good fit?
Well, I think it always takes a little bit of time because I always start out being pretty reluctant, and since I've had some experiences getting to know some therapists that I didn't enjoy, I'm always I'm always kind of looking out. But no, I think with this counselor, pretty quick off the bat, I figured out that we connected. She just made me feel very comfortable and being honest, and was able to say to me, this is kind of a sanctuary, and you step in here, you say what you want to say, and you can do what you want to do, and I want you to be totally yourself. And for someone to tell me that I could totally be myself, I mean, people have said that before, but it was really kind of eye-opening and also heartwarming. And I was able to just feel like, okay, this is where I can just say whatever I need to and get this work done. And so I felt pretty comfortable this time around, and felt like it was something that was going to last. And I was right about that. So my intuition was right. And that's something that I think you gain too throughout experiences, is a little bit of intuition. So.
And would you recommend the same kind of process when somebody is working with a new peer support specialist, that they kind of meet with people and see if that feels like a good fit, if they feel comfortable?
Yeah, I think with that, it's all about feeling that you can communicate on a level that you can be honest with each other, and that you're not gonna so I guess it's a fine line whether someone's going to upset you or not. I mean, in order for people to have to tell you hard things, sometimes you're going to get upset, and that's a hard part about any job where you're having to kind of correct some things, or if people are asking for criticism. But I think yeah, with a peer support, I just get to know them a little bit and just talk to them honestly about how you feel about your illness, how they feel about theirs. And I think with a peer support specialist, I'd be very interested right off the bat in hearing kind of their recovery story, because then you get to match up kind of where you think you connect within that story.
Yeah, I love that. And it kind of sets the tone for being able to share things with each other. Peer support it takes down some of the barriers that counseling comes with, that therapy comes with. Therapy comes with barriers. There's logistical transportation barriers, right? There's scheduling certain work hours barriers. There's also it's a pro and a con, right? It is a double-edged sword. The fact that your counselor is really, the whole session is about you as the client, right? And so your counselor doesn't come in most of the time and say, this is my life, this is my experience, this is my, right? Therapy is very, and BHIS as well, is very focused on the client, right? And we have boundaries and ethical codes that for therapy, we have to uphold. Peer support doesn't have that problem, right? Like peer support, like you can meet at their house, they could come, you can go to the park, you can go out for coffee, you could drive around in the car, right? Maybe not with gas prices what they are right now, right? But maybe a couple of years ago, drive around in the car and stop at a park and just talk. And so people don't have to worry so much about I see my therapist once a week, right? So I can only really talk to them then and during the session. And peer support is so powerful in that way, because you're starting out the relationship as a peer support specialist, sharing with that person and kind of being able to set the tone of sharing our life experiences with each other by saying, yeah, here, I'll go first, right? Here's everything I was working through 10 years ago, right? So I'll share that with you so that you know that what my experience is, and hopefully feel more comfortable sharing yours. And you guys can meet, is it as frequently as you want to or need to, or are there limits on that?
There are limits depending on what program you're involved in. but that's usually, in general, I mean, if we could do it, obviously we would meet as frequently as we can. But I think that depends on if you were working with the integrated health home or what grant you would be under. I assume that would determine how often you could meet. But for the most part, we get to meet more frequently than like SCL sometimes can, or CSP, if we know what those acronyms mean. I don't know if we need to clarify those, but
So you can meet a little bit more frequently than maybe the standard once a week.
yes, yeah, typically we can. And we have just kind of a wide variety of what we can do as well, as far as what kinds of things we can help with, what kinds of things we can do to support people. I just think that the good thing about peer support is it's pretty vague in its definition as far as what the objectives are. But the main objective to me is being able to relate. I mean, that's the major thing, is if you can find someone you can relate to, it means all the difference in the world for recovery. So
Absolutely. Yeah, it's that connection. It's that relationship with somebody else, and to have somebody that you can share those feelings with, somebody that you can share those experiences with, that's going to understand, and who's going to want to understand, and who's going to want to hear you.
absolutely.
Yeah, it really is a beautiful thing. And it is state funded, right? So either through grants or through state insurance. And so for those that qualify for peer support, it doesn't cost anything to have that support person, which is just amazing.
Right. And I find that people, the comment that I get the most is wow, you know about this because it sounds like you've been through it. And I hear that a lot from people, and that's kind of the meat and potatoes of peer support right there, is you can get that foot in the door right away, and you can say, hey, let's work on this together, and not me try to push you around or tell you what you need to do. It's more of a, hey, let's try to connect where you're at and go from there. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So peer support, therapy, the warm line. And so people who have a peer support specialist can still call the warm line and talk to somebody if they've got something that they need to talk about right away.
Absolutely. And so the warm line, to give you a little bit of info on that, it's for people who are 18 years and older. And then also it covers the whole state of Iowa. So those are the two things I wanted to put out there about that. So
That is awesome. And we will have the phone number in the show notes as well. But that warm line is 1-844-775-9276 or 1-844-775-WARM, WARM. And it's a free call, isn't it?
absolutely, yes. Yeah. Free, and it's a great service. We have a lot of people on there who are very knowledgeable and also just very comforting, and that makes all the difference.
And so when you're doing this work, I mean, gosh, you've been doing this work for 7 years now and giving back in that way. How has that changed your day to day as you've been doing peer support? I know a lot of people listening probably, most of the people that I talk to about peer support are, if they're struggling through something like that, then they have interest in being peer support at some point. So how has that process kind of changed your day-to-day life?
Well, it's interesting because I suppose it's like other professions, when you tell people things and then you are catching yourself and saying, now, do I do that? Is that something that I actually do? And I think that I do, because of the work that I do, pay a lot more attention to getting to my appointments, making sure if I have an appointment set, I follow through on that. There's things, because I know that's really important with the people that I work with. has always been important to my mental health, is to get those things done. Another thing that I think about a lot is structure. I don't have all the structure in the world like somebody would that was working, a very, very structured day where it's the same hours every day, because my hours do change a little, but still to have some kind of structure, something to look forward to and to have on the schedule makes a big difference. So those kinds of things really stick out to me when I'm telling those to other people. And also, I hate to say it, but exercise, like, it's that one thing that we all hate to do. We have a hard time doing. Some people love to do it, and I think that's awesome. But especially for people who suffer from depression, anxiety, getting that exercise in is really hard. And the thing that I have to say about it is I do very small amounts of exercise at a time, and it still makes a really big deal, a really big difference, I should say, because just getting that little endorphin kick going, anything like that, it really has changed my mentality. So even if it means just doing a plank for 30 seconds and walking away, that has made a difference in what I'm doing. And it's hard because you have to tell that to people, and they say, well, do you do it? And I finally can say, yes, I do. But it took years for me to say, okay, I guess I'm in on the exercise thing. So.
I love that. So as we're sharing this information with other people, we're sharing it. We're talking to ourselves as we're sharing that, and it does help for accountability so much to be able to go, okay, I gotta walk the walk that I'm talking.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that tip about exercise too, because gosh, it is so important for, I think with exercise, people tend to think about the impact on our physical health, but our emotional and our mental health are so impacted by exercise and sunlight and dirt. And it's amazing how much of a difference those things make, and sleep, right? Those things that are like so foundational that it's hard, that sometimes we don't think about them, right? Because it's like, well, of course I gotta breathe to live. There's difference between doing that and going, I'm going to take some deep breaths, right? Or I've got to walk around and move around to function in my day, but I'm going to do a plank for 30 seconds, right? And so I love that, like, intentionally doing it. My daughter's 5, and she's been, whenever she starts to get whiny now, I've been telling her to have a drink of water, and oh my gosh, it works. Like, I don't, and now, like, I'm doing it because if I start to get grumpy, she actually handed me a water bottle yesterday, which
You're grumpy mom.
she was like, Mom, you need to drink some water. And she was right. And it's just so funny how, sharing that information really does make us look at ourselves and go, okay, am I doing these things? And when we are, it makes that message that we're sending to other people so much more valuable. It makes that message so much more powerful. And I think really the theme of what we've talked about today is that, who we are and what we've lived through and what we've experienced and what we do in our lives, that matters. That is the support. Like, that is the connection. And I think that that's just really, really cool that you've been able to identify those things and go, yep, I'm making changes for me. And now it's not just about making them because they benefit me. Now any change that I make in myself benefits all of the people that I work with, all the peers that I'm meeting with.
Sure. Yeah. And I guess the other thing I was going to mention about all this stuff too is I have, if I talk to my friends, I have kind of this pile of hobbies I enjoy, and that makes a big difference, I think, in recovery as well. Because if we have these things that we can enjoy and work on kind of incrementally, that's kind of a good way to approach some of that structure when you don't always get it from work or other places. But like, I love to fish. I'm an avid fisherman, bass and trout, and I love to play guitar. So I love to make music. I make one of these as an instrument that I built myself.
Oh, wow.
So I just I tinker with a lot of different things and use my hands a lot. And so I think that anything that we can do to add structure to our recovery, I think is a pretty positive thing. So.
Absolutely. I love that. Those are wonderful, wonderful tips. They're like, and I think that when we hear that, if we have depression or we have anxiety, we can hear those things sometimes and we can go like, well, yeah, that's easy to say, right? But hearing it from you, who's been in that place where you're like, well, it's easy to say, and then you've changed your life and your outlook so that you can do those things, and you're like, no, really though, I'm doing it. It makes such a difference hearing those things that we know we should sleep 8 hours, we know we should go for walks, but hearing it from somebody who's really made that change in their life is, I think, just so much more powerful than reading it in a book. Right? Yeah, that is awesome. So if you could give one suggestion to somebody either on the fence about starting counseling or on the fence about starting peer support, what might you give them for suggestion?
Well, I think the first suggestion is always be patient. In this day and age, patience seems to be kind of lost. But I think that especially when you're trying to find someone that you want to work with and you think you want to work in depth with, someone that you're going to share information with that's very important to you, I think it's really important to stick with things for a while and try to be as patient as possible getting going.
Absolutely. That comes across in your story and your testimony so well, right? That 10 years of consistency. I mean, that takes a lot of patience, and it is paid off for you, and you're living proof that patience can really, really pay off. Just extremely inspiring. So Austin, thank you so much for being here. And we really enjoyed learning more about peer support. And I think that it is a service that just really everybody needs to know about. So we really appreciate you sharing.
I agree, and thank you for having me. Well, I'm Austin Snell and I need a counselor.
Awesome. So do we. So does Chrissa. So do I. We all do. Everybody can benefit. I love that. And peer support and counseling, right? It's not a competition. There never is competition between the two. One has a lot of those barriers on it, right? And it's important in its own right, counseling, but peer support just as important in its own right. They are bringing completely different benefits to each person. So I just think it's amazing. And I think everybody should do both of them if they can.
Yes, agreed.
Yes. So if you are listening and you're in Iowa and you're interested in getting a peer support specialist, go ahead and reach out. The Abbey Center in Cedar Rapids does peer support, and there are peer support places all around Iowa. If you've got an IHH, an integrated health home near you, you can go ahead and check in with them about getting connected with peer support. Also, if you've got Iowa Medicaid, go ahead and call the number on the back of your card. That will bring you to your MCO, and your MCO can tell you who is doing peer support in your area and how you can get connected with them. If you are in the Cedar Rapids area, reach out to the Abbey Center so that you can get connected with Austin or one of his co-workers there. The warm line, 1-844-775-WARM. So 1-844-775-9276. So give them a call. There's no requirement on that. And that is a free call to anybody in Iowa. So go ahead and give them a call too. If you're looking for mental health care, mental health therapy, or you're looking for behavioral health counseling for your kiddos, give us a call at Heart and Solutions, 800-531-4236.
And like Julie mentioned at the beginning, we post new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central. So save up that laundry or meal prepping or whatever task you hate doing, and listen to us while you do that on Sunday night. And then we can help convince you to call a counselor or call Austin at the Abbey Center and get set up with peer support counseling as well.
Or exercising now.
Yeah, or you can exercise while you listen
We
to
should
us on
add that
Sunday.
to the list of things people don't
If
like
you're
doing.
exercising, you can ask while you exercise. Yeah, exactly. And if you have any questions for us or for Austin, you can find us on Facebook at You Need a Counselor Podcast or on Instagram at You Need a Counselor Podcast, and DM us there as well. So I'm Chrissa Hunt.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.
Bye.
Bye.